In the theater, conflict is good, conflict is compelling, and conflict is drama.
Wait for me.
Do you believe it? They pay me to go to work to start fights. Yeah. I'm a fight master. So I know a lot of you are theater goers here. You may know what a fight master does, but outside of this industry, no one knows what I do. They look at me like I'm this strange anomaly, and they always ask me the same 3 questions. What's a fight master? Do I know martial arts? And am I Bruce Lee? I kid you. So question number 1, what's a fight master? A fight master is an expert who choreographs fights for TV, film, and theater. Question number 2, do I know martial arts? Yes, I've had to learn a lot of styles of martial arts, but the real mastery in this business is not about choreographing different styles of fights. It's about choreographing different styles of people. And number 3, okay, I get it. When people see me, a small Asian man, and they learn that I choreograph fights, they always hound me with the same question. Are you Bruce Lee? Are you Bruce Lee? Please tell me that you're Bruce Lee. No, I am not. Do you not know that he died over 40 years ago? Hi, my name is Jackie Chan. So, I know that fights look like a lot of fun, but it takes a lot of collaboration and practice to get them there. And that collaboration begins when I ask the actors 2 things. And that's what I'm here to talk about now. Because the same 2 things that tell me how to start a fight in the theater can stop you from getting into a conflict in real life. Now, you might be thinking, like, what does this guy who starts fights in the theater know about stopping them in real life? Well, let me tell you. When I was a little kid, my hero was Zorro. Every night, I'd grab my plastic sword, I'd don my cape and mask, and I'd swash my buckle, I'd turn up the TV really loud, and I love doing it so much, I still have the costume to prove it. I wanted to wear it today, but my wife said that if I did, she wouldn't come. But the real reason why I turned up the volume loud was to drown out the sounds of violence when my father went after my mother. You see, it was something that I was ashamed of, and I held on to it for many, many years. Now, years later, I was asked to choreograph this powerful drama called Extremities. It had a lot of domestic violence. Here, I actually have a few seconds of video to show you. Not your everyday sword fighter or punch-up, huh? For me, that felt like I was actually choreographing my childhood. So, not surprisingly, about the same time, I started to see a therapist for PTSD related to what happened in my childhood, and she said, I want to come watch you work. Okay, so she watched me rehearse, and afterwards she came up and she said, it surprised me, David. I thought you were going to choreograph these fights, but you did all this work with safety in front of it before you even choreographed these fights. David, you don't choreograph fights. You choreograph trust. And, from that moment on, it was just that moment compelled me to eventually become a certified conflict resolution trainer, in addition to being a certified fight master. And it's from both of those unique perspectives that I talk to you now. So, let's go back to the 2 things that tell me how to start a fight in the theater, okay? And to demonstrate that, I've created a fictitious scene, okay? Careful Katie is in her mid-20s, and she's diligently working on a budget that was due an hour ago. Her project manager is named Jumpy Joe. Now, the first question I asked him is, why are you fighting? I mean, from your perspective, why is your character fighting? Well, I can't choreograph the fight unless I know the reason why they're fighting. So Jumpy Joe says, I'm fighting because she's late with the budget. And Careful Katie says, well, I'm fighting because he yelled at me. Right? Makes sense, okay? Second question, how do you deal with conflict? The answers to that question tell me what the choreography in scene will look like. So, Jumpy Joe says, when I get in the middle of a conflict and I don't like what happened, I'm just going to scream and yell. And Careful Katie says, I don't like conflict, but I usually will just snap and then walk away. So let me show you what that looks like.
Is it finished?
Stop bugging me. I'm going to get it done.
But you said...
Just trust me.
So it's not my job to just choreograph any blanket fight move. It's my job to listen to what they say and then to translate that into action, okay? So let me show you how the choreography changes if Careful Katie says, you know what, I don't back away. Actually, I think I can handle myself.
Is it finished?
Stop bugging me. I'm going to get it done.
But you said...
All right. So let me give you one more example. This time, both Careful Katie and Jumpy Joe say, listen, you know what? I'm not afraid of conflict, so bring it on, baby.
Is it finished yet?
Stop bugging me. I'm going to get it done.
But you said...
So before I go on, let me just say this. Not all conflict is bad. As a matter of fact, most conflict is good because it often leads to better results, especially when you work it out through collaboration. It only gets bad when you make it personal and you get triggered into doing something or saying something that you regret, okay? So raise your hands if you have ever yelled at or felt like yelling at a family member who's just unselfish and unreliable. Raise your hands. Okay, great. Now raise your other hand if you've ever yelled at or felt like yelling at a coworker who just won't take responsibility for their actions, right? Yeah. You know what that feels like, right? You just get all worked up, your body tightens up, your heart rate and your breathing speed up, and you actually kind of feel hot, right? Those things are called hot buttons. Hot buttons are issues, people, and behavior that kind of get you all fired up. And when they're pushed really, really hard, they kind of set you off, right? So the interesting thing is we all have different hot buttons. I might react to someone who's hostile and abrasive, and you might not. Or you might react to someone who's just disrespecting you, and the other person says, oh, that's no big deal at all, okay? Here's the interesting thing. When it comes to hot buttons, we are almost always, there's something that we all have in common. When they are pushed, we almost always blame someone else for making us angry. Now let's look at this slide. Okay. So this is a list of the most common workplace hot buttons developed over the last 20 years by the Mediation Training Institute, 9 of them there. A lot of these hot buttons you may have at home also. So you remember the fight between Careful Katie and Jumpy Joe? So the minute Jumpy Joe heard that Careful Katie was late with the budget, his inner thought said, oh, since I'm the project manager, I'm going to get in trouble, so my boss is going to think that I'm unreliable and untrustworthy. So what happened was his inner thoughts pushed his own hot buttons, and then he blamed it on Katie, okay? And then what happened next is the minute Katie sees Jumpy Joe come in, her hot buttons get all fired up. She sees him as, like this, and they are her hot buttons, but she's going to blame it on him before he even says a word to her, right? So here's the message. The next time you're in the middle of a conflict and it starts to ramp up, step back and name it. Because when you name it and know it, you're more in control of your own hot buttons. You can step back and not get so bent out of shape. Now, you still may not like that person's behavior, but at least you won't be caught off guard.
Finished?
Stop bugging me. I'm going to get it done.
But you said...
Thank you for your concern, but I've got this.
Great. So We talked about the why, okay? So let's look at the how. How do you deal with conflict? How do you deal with conflict? Do you implode? Do you explode? Do you freeze? Think about it. Got a little hint. What did you learn about conflict from your role models when you were growing up as a child?
I've learned that the one who screams the loudest generally wins.
I learned to bury it down deep.
I learned to walk away.
I learned to shut down.
Learned that you can't let the other person walk away from a conflict.
Instead of punishing my brother and I, my parents would sit us down for like 45 minutes to talk to us about right and wrong when we were little. And one of these times, my brother was like, "Can't you just spank us like the other parents? This is so boring."
So the interesting thing is when our hot button, when our hot buttons are pressed, we just sort of go wild, right? Here's the thing. So I told you what happened in my childhood, right? So in spite of my father's behavior and all that sort of thing, I never learned to explode. No. What I did was way worse. I shut it down, and I learned to implode. And I imploded so much that I couldn't function at all. Now, ironically, the only thing that got better for me was that I got a lot of fight choreography gigs out of it because everyone said, "Hey, listen, if you want Leong to do it, he'll make it look real and it'll be safe." So, here's the thing that's real. And because of professional help, I learned to express myself in really healthy ways. And it started when I learned why I was fighting and how I could deal with conflict. So, let me leave you with this. In the theater, conflict is good, conflict is compelling, and conflict is dramatic. But in life, conflict is traumatic when you make it personal and you blame it on someone else. You get triggered into doing something or saying something that you regret. By the way, Careful Katie is now on administrative leave. So the good thing is you can almost always stop it before it even starts. So the next time you find yourself in the middle of a conflict and it starts to heat up, step back and name it. Because when you name your hot buttons, you know your hot buttons. When you name them and know them, you can step back and stay cool. Thank you.